Hi everyone, today I am sharing with you my dark little secret, which is my eyeshadow palette collection. I have quite a lot, however I have recently decluttered a lot of them and have started labeling all my palettes as to when I purchased them, so I know roughly how old they are, all that sort of stuff. Some of them are fairly old, and for those of you who are wondering how I keep my products even though they're from like 6 years ago, I do use this Cosmetic Sanitizer mist from Beauty So Clean. It basically cleans, rejuvenates and removes bacteria from pressed powders, eyeshadows and cream foundations. So if you want to kind of keep your eyeshadows for longer than the I guess the recommended use by date, which is generally 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, then this is a good option. So if you're as nosy as me to see what people have in their collection, because I really enjoy watching these videos, then just keep watching. So I'm going to go in chronological order from the very first palettes that I've bought to my latest purchases, and maybe talk about what I like about them, my favorite shades from them or something like that, and we'll go from there. So the first palette that I can ever remember owning is the Alice in Wonderland palette by Urban Decay. This was their first one. They have a newer one which was released I believe last year, but I don't have that one. It comes with 16 shades, really cool colors, really playful colors that I hardly ever used back in 2010 because, let's face it, I was a nerdy university student spending all my time studying and not very much time doing makeup. So it really just sat in my drawer looking pretty. But what attracted me to this palette was this really cool pop-up feature, which I thought was really different. And, you know, I feel like Urban Decay was really known for its innovative packaging and colorful eyeshadows and all that sort of stuff. Next, I have the Urban Decay Naked palette. Now, I think a lot of people would say that this is their first palette because they kind of pioneered this nude kind of palette, in my opinion, and made palettes popular because I just feel like back in the day, you know, people didn't have, 50 palettes in their collection. They might have had just one or two, and this is the one that a lot of people wanted to get their hands on, and it was so hard to get their hands on back in the day in 2011. Then we have the Urban Decay, I believe this is called the Preen palette. This is, again, a very old palette from circa Feb 2011, and it has 6 shades in here, very pretty shades. However, didn't use it very much, as you can see, haven't hit pan on any of them. Now, another palette from circa 2011 is this Uemura Takano collaboration, and it's called the Bowwow Magic Queen palette. I believe I got this as a present. To be honest, I don't really like Uemura eyeshadows. This was before I discovered better formulations, but the colors were quite pretty, very shimmery, very girly. Again, didn't use it very much. There's 2 cream eyeshadows in here, 3 metallic shades and 1 blush shade. And now this is probably way too light for me to use on my skin tone anymore. But I keep this for sentimental purposes. I think the packaging is really pretty. But besides that, I don't like the shadows. Now I have a whole bunch of MAC palettes that I believe are from either 2011, 2012. But they were basically, they're super old, but the reason why I keep these is because I really like the packaging. I mean, it's really Art Deco. These actually were my mum's, but I somehow stole it off her and I have them now. The shades in here don't really appeal to me, but I keep this because I like the packaging. Is that a good reason? Then I have these other ones called the MAC Delights 6 Eye Trend, and there are 2 of them. This one's the Royal Assets. I really like the packaging on these. MAC don't do things like this anymore. The shades in here, oops. That's the annoying thing about having brushes in palettes, they just always fall out. And I never use the brushes in the palettes. The shades in here are nice, but don't use them very often. Haven't used them for years. I like this shade in here actually. This one's a pretty shade. This is like a brown shade with a green shift to it, sort of. I don't know if you can see it there. So now we're in the year 2012, and I have a few more palettes to add to my collection. Another is by Uemura. It is basically a palette that I designed. It's got a orange blush, a metallic blue, and a metallic white shade. I don't know why I chose these colors, to be honest. I never used it really. I might have used it a couple of times, but really hardly ever used it. Again, like I said, I am not a big fan of the Uemura, formulation. I just find that it's a little bit too soft in pigmentation. I just want more of a punch, which doesn't deliver. Then I've got this Illamasqua 4-color liquid metal palette, and in theory, these shades are really beautiful, and they are all very pigmented metallic shades. But then when you put them on the lid, they slip and slide everywhere, and they crease, and they're awful. And why do I have this palette? This is probably something else that I could have decluttered. And it's a real pity because these shades are really pretty. It's just that they're way too creamy, and if, like me, you've got texture on your eyelids, you've got oily eyelids, then this is going to crease like crazy. Then we have yet another Uemura palette, and this is the makeup palette Eyes and Cheeks. I'm not sure whether I assembled this myself or whether it came like this. Uemura love to mix their eyeshadows with a blush or something like that. I personally prefer my palettes to be either all eyeshadows or all blush or all highlighters or one of the same type. This palette probably doesn't work on my skin tone anymore. It used to work when I was a bit lighter, but this palette probably, this blush in particular, probably won't suit me anymore. And cream eyeshadows, just don't use cream eyeshadows. So I could declutter it, but it's still in my collection. Obviously, I'm probably a hoarder and have an issue with getting rid of things. Then I have the Naked 2 by Urban Decay, and I believe this came out in 2011, but I got this in 2012, and it has some nice shades as well. It comes with a dual-ended brush, double-ended. I generally don't like brushes in palettes. I prefer it when they don't have a brush in there, but that's just my personal preference because I never use them. And again, I didn't use this palette very much, just because I find that the color scheme, it's a little bit too cool for me, and yeah, I don't know, maybe I should pass this on as well, but I have it for sentimental purposes and because I have a hoarding problem. Then in 2012 in February, I bought these when I went to Japan, and these are my first ever Suqqu quads. This is when the obsession started and when I started collecting these Suqqu palettes because I really like the formula, especially the matte eyeshadows. They're really beautiful and very minimal fallout, so that is really nice as well. This is the 01 palette Kitsubata. I've actually got another video where I've swatched all the shades and all that, so I'm not going to go and swatch my favorite shades or anything. If you want to see that, I will put it in the suggested videos. The next palette I have is a small duo by Nars, and this one is in Pandora. They have a bunch of these duos, and this one has a matte black shade, and it's got like very fine glitters in it, and then a matte white. That's pretty much everything I have from 2012. 2013, 2014, surprisingly, I don't have anything from back then. I think I must have been on a very good behavior and didn't buy any more makeup, and also I was living abroad, so I really didn't buy any makeup. So in 2015 I watched this Lisa Eldridge tutorial, and she used this Dior palette. It is the 5-color palette in 754 Rosy Tan. It is actually quite nice, but in general I don't really like Dior palettes because I think their pigmentation is a little bit blah for the price point. I think for the price point you can get a nice indie palette that is way more pigmented, and yeah, but this is a nice one. The shades in here are very feminine and pretty. Then in August I bought this palette by Numeric Proof from PM Studio. They are a online store as well as boutique in Sydney, and they have a whole bunch of different matte colors. I actually really like this palette. The colors are very, very intense. In particular, I'll swatch for you a few of my favorite shades, and you'll see how intense the pigmentation is. Look at that. I have to say though, these colors are quite dry to the touch, and it's quite a strange formula in a sense that they are exceptionally dry. However, they do work well. So I do like this palette because the shades in here really, they inspire me and I like them. Then in October 2015, I ordered a couple more eyeshadow palettes from Suqqu, from the Selfridges website. Just a couple, you know. This one is in no random order, 20 curry butter. This is quite nice. It has 1 cream shade and 3 shimmery shades. I do prefer their quads when they have mattes in there because I do like their matte formula. Then we have Sakura butter, which is also very pretty as well. And this one is 25. Suqqu palettes are definitely on the pricier side, but I find that their quality is justified. This one is 18. Then I also have the Illamasqua Nomadic palette, and I got this again in October, my birthday month, so it must be why I have so many palettes suddenly added to my collection. I actually really like the shades in here. They're very interesting. I like this kind of khaki green, this burnt orange. They're beautiful. And actually, Illamasqua eyeshadows I feel like really underrated. They have absolutely no fallout because they're so finely milled and they're very beautiful to apply. 2015 was also the year that I discovered the Melt Cosmetics stacks, and I bought 2 of them, Dark Matter and Lovesick. These are really amazing eyeshadows. Their mattes are beautiful. The shimmers are also nice, but I think they're more well known for their mattes. Have a look at that. This is the Lovesick stack, which is probably my favorite stack of all the stacks that I have, and I have them all. And then we have the Dark Matter stack, which is this one here. The packaging might annoy some because sometimes it's hard to see where everything is. KonMari would not be happy, but it is very different. I really like this shade here, Enigma. It's probably my favorite out of all these shades. And I think that's all the palettes I bought in 2015. Now, 2016 was kind of a crazy year. It was the year of eyeshadow palettes. I really bought so many eyeshadow palettes that year, and just warning, it's a lot. I actually bought the Radioactive stack when it was released, and I'm actually using the yellow in this shade on my eyelids right now. This is Neon. It's a beautiful pigmented yellow. The only thing is it has a hell of a lot of fallout, so I always place a tissue to catch any fallout when I'm applying it. Then I did a crazy thing and I bought both of the Natasha Denona 28 pan palettes. I have this one, which is the blue? This is the green brown one. I'm looking at it and saying blue, but it is because there's a few, like one blue here. And the shades in here are gorgeous. From this palette, probably my favorites are Antique Olive, which is this beautiful olive shade. Cloudy Blue, beautiful. And I like also Moonstone as well. I think this is a really nice, like, inner corner highlight shade. Then I have the 28 Blue Purple palette. And this is actually my favorite of the two because I prefer blue purple shades. I love this rose gold color. The Calypso Blue, which is one of my favorites. This is probably, I did not swatch this very well. Very pricey, but I really like her shimmery shades. And I'm glad to have this palette, even though it's a bomb. It costs a bomb. Next I have this BH Cosmetics Galaxy Chic palette. I really like it because I like the theme and I like the shades in here. This is a baked formula and they're quite pigmented as well. I don't use this super often, but again, I got sucked into this with the packaging. Isn't that sometimes the case? Then again from PM Studio, I believe I bought this there. I have this Makeup Forever 9 Artist Shadow palette, and this is a very neutral palette. My sister was raving on about the formula for Makeup Forever, and so I decided to buy this. like it's got a very, you have to use these with a stiff brush, otherwise they don't really pick up very well. So it's kind of a little bit trickier to use, but very pigmented. The only thing is I find that I don't use this very often because it's on the cooler side and I prefer warm tones. I'm gonna go a bit faster, otherwise I'm never gonna get through all this. I've got the Marc Jacobs, the Free Spirit palette. I brought this when I went traveling to America and Asia. I really like the shades in here. They are definitely kind of muted, but still very pigmented. The formula is beautiful, easy to work with, and create a lot of beautiful, sophisticated looks with this palette. And it also travels really well because the packaging is very, very sturdy. Then I have these quads by Suqqu again. These were the limited edition ones designed by makeup artist George, and I'll put his Instagram handle down below. This one is my all-time favorite because this shade, I really like this orange shade here. And then I have the EX30 palette. Again, I did a swatch video and a lookbook on these Suqqu palettes, so you can watch it in that one. I also went traveling in September and I went to Korea, Taiwan and New York, and in Taiwan I picked up the 32 palette, which has an interesting detailing at the front. I'll be honest, it's not my favorite from Suqqu. I feel like they can do a little bit better than this. Then I also got the Marc Jacobs Style Icon 240 About Last Night, and I love the packaging and I love the eyeshadows in here as well. Again, Marc Jacobs shadows work really well, and this shade is really pretty. I really like this gold shade, this gunmetal grey shade as well, and even this is a really nice taupe shade for transition. I also picked up the Lorac Unzipped eyeshadow palette from Ulta when I was in New York. I like the shades in here because they're very rose toned. I haven't played with this a whole lot, so I really should use this more because the shades in here are very pretty. I've got a few shimmery shades and also a few mattes, so I think it's pretty well balanced. But again, really need to test this out more than I have. Then I also bought the Dose of Colors EyesCream palette. I missed out on the Hidden Treasures palette and that really bugged me, and so I decided to try out this palette because the shades in here are quite interesting, and I don't feel like I have these shades in my collection, like Lavender Honey, Mint Chip, they're really pretty, Banana Split. But again, because of these kind of shades, I probably don't use this as often as I could be. If I didn't have such a conservative day job, I probably would be wearing these crazy eyeshadows all the time, right? I also picked up the Rust Stack by Melk Cosmetics and the Gunmetal Stack in September. The Rust Stack has some really nice matte shades. I really like this one here in Rubbish. Nice name. Then we have the Gunmetal Stack, and this is probably my least favorite out of all the stacks because there is a lot of fallout with these shimmery shades. Look at that. That's what happens when you try and close it. Then we have a few more Natasha Denona palettes. This one is the Star palette, which came out last year. It has 18 shades. It's meant to be used in rows like this, across, diagonally, sideways. However, you know, you can just play with it how you want. These are nice. She reformulated her mattes and they are a lot more pigmented, buttery smooth, and easy to work with. I also have the Natasha Denona 10-pan palette because I'm the kind of person that likes to keep my collections complete, and this one has some nice pops of color as well as a little bit more, you know, neutral shades. Then I also got the Lorac Mega Pro 3. This one has a lot of neutral shades. It's got a large mirror, so I think it's quite good for traveling. As you can see, I'm wearing my pajama pants and I haven't used it a whole heap. But when I have used it, I do enjoy the looks that can come out of this. I also bought the MetalMatte Palette by Kat Von D. And this is the only Kat Von D palette I have. It is absolutely massive. I don't think I'll ever pan this eyeshadow palette. There are a lot of nice matte shades as well as shimmery shades. I need to use it a lot more than I do, but because again it's on the cooler side, it's not really in my comfort zone, so I haven't touched it as much as I should. I also should mention to you that I have a whole bunch of Visart palettes as well, that I've bought at various times, and I recently depotted them, not that successfully, into empty palette, and some of them have cracked, so it's a bit sad looking, but I pretty much have most of the Visart palettes except for a few of the Theory palettes, and I don't have the Cool Mattes palette. I like to keep this in my kit because the formula is really, really nice. They're not the cheapest palettes, but I find that they're very high quality. So I have the ones that couldn't fit, as well as 2 Coloured Rain eyeshadows that couldn't fit in their palette either. Then I've also got 2 Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes. This one is the Master palette by Mario Didivanovic. It is a really awesome palette. It's probably one of my favorite palettes. It's got 3 mattes and the rest are shimmers. I think at first glance it looks like a very boring palette, but it works really well together. The looks that you can come out of this are gorgeous as well. But why is it limited edition? I wish this was permanent. Then of course the Modern Renaissance palette that everyone pretty much talks about. The shades in here are very beautiful, and the formula and quality is also very good. I have a video where I've done 10 looks with this palette, so if you want to see that, I'll link it as well. Then I have 2 more palettes by Suqqu. This one's are also limited edition from the UK collection. This one is a 35 palette. Then I have the 36 palette, which is also really pretty. I also managed to get this Empower palette by Illamasqua when they were having a clearance sale at Maya. They used to be sold at Maya, but I believe because they weren't doing very well there and Illamasqua wasn't so popular, that they got rid of the counter, which is kind of unfortunate because I feel like they have some really nice things there. But you can still get them online. I feel like this has a little bit of a chocolate scent for some reason. Then we have the Coloured Rain Queen of Hearts palette. This was limited edition and it was restocked again recently, but I think because it's been hyped up so much that it's no longer available, which is a real pity because these shades are really pretty and very eye-catching, pigmented, especially their metallic shades. Here are some of my favorite shades from this palette. They're beautiful. Then I got 3 of the palettes from Juvia's Place. It's another indie brand. And we've got the Nubian palette, which is the first palette they ever released. This one is primarily bronze and coppery shades, brown shades. Then we have the Nubian 2 palette by Juvia's Place. This one is a lot more exciting because there are a few more pops of color and they're really pigmented as well. The color payoff is really good. And then probably my favorite from the Juvia's Place is the Masquerade palette. And this one is very, very colorful. This is not the kind of palette that you can use on its own. You definitely need to mix it with a neutral palette because it doesn't really have your transition shades for my skin tone. Here are some of the shades from this palette. Very, very pigmented. We're nearly there, guys. This takes us up to the present year, 2017. What have I bought so far this year? Well, I've got a massive palette full of Coloured Rain single eyeshadows because I really liked the formula in their Queen of Hearts palette that I decided to pick up their single eyeshadows as well. They have some very beautiful pops of colors like these 2 right here, super pigmented, and I really like the color selection as well. Then I have the Sugar Pill Feline Fancy palette, which they released for Valentine's Day. It has some really, really pretty shades in here. In particular, Kiss Kiss is the shade that your eyes kind of gravitate to. Really nice. I need to play with this a lot more than I have. Then lastly, I have 2 palettes from Visart that came out recently. This one is the Petit Pro and this one is the Warm Mattes palette. I really like this palette so much. I've used it almost daily. These shades really speak to me and they complement my skin tone really well. This one is okay. It's not my absolute favorite, but I think they have, again, some really pretty shades in here. And You can never really go wrong with Visage. They're very reliable in that sense that their eyeshadows are very, very consistent across the board. So that was my full palette collection. I know it was a lot and it probably is going to end up to be a long video, but for one reason or another, I generally like these palettes either for the packaging, for the color, or the sentimental purpose, the sentimental value that I attach to it for one reason or another. If there is a swatch or a review of any of these palettes that you'd like to see, let me know and I'll try my best to do that, or redirect you to a video that I found helpful. And hopefully I haven't bored you, and I will see you next time.